Welcome to the Clutch Time Podcast with your host, Daniel Kreider and Ryan Vargas. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, yeah. It's that time of the year, my brother. We wish y'all a Merry Christmas. Yeah, we had some good games, man. Memphis upsets Alabama. Creighton upsets Villanova. The Colts beat the Patriots. Chiefs beat the Chargers. Mr. Vargas is out for this one. It looks like, Palmer, it's me and you, man. How you doing this evening?
You know, I'm doing all right. I'm a little offended that the Christmas song wasn't the Mariah Carey. I don't even remember. It's not Last Christmas. What the hell is it? All I Wanted for Christmas Is You.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to play any type of Christmas song on a podcast, that's top notch.
Yeah, you got me on that one. I didn't have any Mariah Carey handy, so my bad.
It's good. I'd actually start to question you if you did. So I guess good choice. I'm sorry. A little feisty today.
That's all right. Let's get right into it, man. The NCAA football. Middle Tennessee wins the Bahamas Bowl against Toledo. Coastal Carolina wins. That actually was a close game against Northern Illinois. And the big one is UAB beats number 13 BYU. What's your thoughts on that one? That's kind of a big win for UAB.
I'll get to the University of Alabama, Birmingham in just a second, but I'm really glad the way you kind of conducted these games, because there was a couple that went on, like Liberty versus Eastern Michigan, and like UTEP loses to Fresno State. But ultimately, to go to these bowl games, if you actually think about it, is the experience. A lot of these kids want that traveling experience. So when you have, like, say, a Texas team go to the Texas Alamo Bowl, it's kind of a shot, like a shot in the foot, like, crap, I'm traveling to the state again. So to go to the Bahamas Bowl, it's a low end bowl, but nonetheless, that's got to be one hell of an experience for the kids. Coastal Carolina, the nice Chanticleers, the Fighting Bullets down there.
Yeah.
First bowl win in school history. So congratulations, Chanticleers, on that one. And then my thought is, and we kind of talked about it earlier, whether they're 12th in the AP or voted 13th in the college bowl era, how in the hell does a ranked team that actually has the most wins in the Pac-12, mind you, lose to a non-Power 5? I mean, I don't even think the Blazers, that's their mascot, the Dragons, are pretty sweet, but I don't think they had a program as of 2014 and it got resurrected. So how can you call yourself a ranked team and lose to these guys at any facet? It shouldn't have even been a close game. So I guess whoever picked this bowl game, good job for making it competitive, putting these two teams together. But I gotta say, BYU, you should be ashamed of yourselves. John Smith is rolling over in his grave right now, knowing that his namesake lost to a bunch of scrubs in Alabama.
Well, if that was the case, either that or they had some hella recruiting, for that short period of time, and then to come in and beat BYU. I mean, hey, hats off to that staff. I can tell you that much.
I'll be honest with you. BYU is really not known for its recruiting, because it's kind of like a military school. It's not a party school. You don't just go to BYU like it's Arizona State or Chico State and expect to get down with your bad self, unless you love the Book of Mormon. And for you Mormon listeners out there, I only kid in good fun, but come on, guys. For God's sakes, no pun intended, you guys should have won this game. And I don't know the recruiting status of BYU, but I can almost guarantee you that it's a lot better than UAB and University, Alabama, Birmingham. It's despicable.
Louisiana also beat Marshall. I don't know if you caught any of that game, but that seemed like, a lot of these games, the rankings really pretty much, with exception of the Utah State, Oregon State game, that kind of shocked me a little bit as well. But Utah State was 11-3. So, I mean, that wasn't as bad as, like we were just talking about, UAB and BYU. That, that's at least has a little bit, but I'm sure there's a lot of Beaver fans that were way disappointed after that one.
As they should be. I mean, they're still second-class citizens. They're the younger, redheaded stepchild of the state of Oregon,
Yeah.
and it just kind of shows right here. I mean, you haven't been to a bowl game in 4 years, and let's not. I don't want to make fun of the Beavers to the point where it kind of diminishes the win from Utah State, because they did win the Mountain West and they beat a ranked San Diego State team. So they're good, but are they good enough to beat a Power 5 team? Apparently, if it's Oregon State. But yeah, I'm not happy with these Power 5 teams losing to a group of 5. And for your listeners out there, the distinction between Power 5, that's Pac-12, Big 12, ACC, SEC, Big 10. I think I hit all of that. And then the Mountain West, the Sunset, Conference USA, the AAC. Those are your non-Power 5 schools. They're still Division 1, but they haven't been in the playoffs until this year for a reason, because they don't have the athletes, or they shouldn't have. So I don't know. I think with BYU losing and Oregon State losing to these lesser teams, it really just kind of speaks to, excuse my French, how shitty the Pac-12 has been these last couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'll start improving with some of the coaching changes and whatnot. And let's go into that a little bit. Let's talk about some of the recruiting. This was a big deal this last week, especially with Jackson State and Coach Deion Sanders primetime getting the number 1 recruit in the country. That's a pretty big deal, man. That's a really big deal.
Yeah, if we were to look at last year with the 4 stars that he pulled, and I think he was in the top 100 for all college football. So to be at an FCS level and to recruit at that level, nonetheless an HBCU, a historically Black college and university, is pretty substantial in the college football world. This guy, for you guys who don't know, Coach Prime Deion Sanders played for Florida State, which I'm assuming most of you guys know, but he actually flips that recruit from Florida State. I think his name is Travis Hunter. He was committed to FSU through the whole thick and thin. He kept on saying, I'm going to be a Seminole. I'm going to be a Seminole. Going to Florida State. And then the alma mater, the guy who you guys turned down for Mike Norvell, the head coach now, steals your number 1 prospect and took you guys out of the top 10 in recruiting. It's a phenomenal storyline. Apparently, this kid's going to get about $1 million in NIL, name, image, and likeness, for the people who don't know. I don't know what boosters in Jackson State University has that kind of money, but the kid's going to be fairly rich. But what I want to ask you, do you think this is the right move for the kid? Because I know last week we kind of touched on it, about being a good fit and playing the scheme. And basically, are we talking about the intermediate gratification of, I'm going to make money right now? And is he hurting his potential to make a lot of money in the NFL with this move?
I think each kid, first of all, I want to applaud the kid. Number 1 is FSU, from, most aspects on the recruiting process, FSU is going to look a hell of a lot better than Jackson State University. Let's be honest, exposure and everything. However, I got to applaud the kid. I feel like he made the right choice. And I'm going to tell you why, is because Deion Sanders is not just a football coach. He's a mentor for a lot of these kids, from what I understand. Obviously, I'm not personally tied to any of this, so this is just stuff that, feedback and things like that I'm getting back. But I'll tell you what, if he's setting these kids up for long-term success, then I say, yeah, it is the right move. It is a good move, because maybe that's a system that's going to fit him. I mean, if I understand correctly, he plays on both sides of the ball, but he's also a corner. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that ranking that he received, the number 1 or number 2, depending on what you look at, is for corner. But if you watch a lot of the kids' highlights, he's one hell of a receiver.
Yeah. So, okay. Now, if you look at that, what better option and better choice would it be than to be with Deion Sanders, one of the greatest corners we've ever seen? You know what I mean? And greatest athletes. Let's keep in mind that this dude was playing football, taking a helicopter to the Atlanta Braves game to play in the World Series all in one season. So this guy knows how to work and he knows how to get it done. And so, yeah. So, I mean, there are some disadvantages. I feel like he would get more exposure, obviously, at FSU. I think Georgia was one that was, and that's one of the hats he threw off to the side. And so, yeah, he could have definitely got some better exposure. But there again, going back to the big rant I went on, I think it was last week, was talking about a lot of these kids. It just looks good. Should I go here because this is a predominant school? Should I go to Duke? Or should I go to Western Kentucky, which might be a better fit for me in the system that they run?
No.
I mean, there again, when you're talking about the power teams, I mean, it just really depends. And I mean, most of these kids should know their game well enough to know, what that looks like. So yeah, I applaud him for that. I think it's a good decision.
No. And I would agree with you for the most part too. The only caveat is I sure hope that Deion Sanders stays at Jackson State, because if he doesn't,
yeah,
I mean, that he's going to take all those kids with him, and
right.
of course I would too. You'd be stupid not to. It's a double-edged sword when it comes to these HBCUs where you have such a dominating coach and such a polarizing figure who can get you the recruits just to up and leave and possibly cut your revenue in half. And I don't know if you watched this game, because we're talking about bowl games here, but the Celebration Bowl, that was South Carolina State, or is it South Carolina A&M? I think it's South Carolina State versus Jackson State. And actually, South Carolina State won. And they beat the snot out of Jackson State University. So that was a nice little win. And I think South Carolina State only was 5-6 versus a 10-1 Jackson State team. So good job, Bulldogs. Way to put Coach Prime in his place, but it probably won't happen next year.
Yeah, I don't think you'll see that very often. And I think there's, he's obviously bringing some, because like we've said before, there's been plenty of, HBCU teams, like Michael Strahan and Jerry Rice, and some of those guys came out of those schools,
So talking about recruiting, I mean, typically speaking, within the last 20 years, you had to have a top 10 recruiting class within 3 years to win a national championship. So let's say in 2019, you have a top 10 recruiting class. By 2021, you should be in contention with a national championship. Did you see how many SEC teams were in the top 10? And I'm also counting Texas and Oklahoma, because they're going to move to the SEC pretty soon.
No, I did not.
5. Texas A&M was number 1 right now. Then it's Georgia, then Alabama. Then you have your Ohio State at 4. Texas at number 5, and then you kind of get a little muddied with Notre Dame, North Carolina University. So good job, Mac Brown, turning a basketball school into a football powerhouse. And I noticed that UNC basketball is not doing so hot. Am I correct in this?
They are having their struggles this year. Yeah, that is it's one of those things, like they play a Michigan team and you look at them and you're like, wow, these kids are good. And then they play Kentucky this last week and it looked like they might as well just stayed in North Carolina, so it's one of those teams at this point right now. So yeah, they're having their challenges.
All right. Good job, Mac Brown, turning that basketball powerhouse into a football dynasty. And then speaking of Kentucky, I think they had their best recruiting class thus far. They're number 11. Then Mizzou, which is another SEC team, is number 12. And essentially in the top 25 in the recruiting classes, it's just a ton of SEC teams. Oklahoma didn't seem to really miss Lincoln Riley, because they're sitting at number 10 right now, which is a good spot to be. However, Oregon is at 35, which they've been in the top 10 for the last couple of years. And then this Bo Nix guy, this just happened today, quarterback for Auburn, transferred over to the University of Oregon. And I'm getting real sick and tired of seeing these Ducks take on these transfer quarterbacks, because when you see Oregon at its best, it's when they recruit and develop their quarterback talent, like a Marcus Mariota, or who's that kid, Herbert, who plays for the Chargers. When they're at their worst is when they take these transfer scrubs, like this Brown kid. Bo Nix is the newest one, and then I forgot the kid's name. He went to Eastern Michigan. I think it's like Vernon Adams. So I think ultimately, if we talk about the Pac-12, the Pac-12. USC has an opportunity to take it over again because Oregon just keeps getting these scrub transfers and thinking that they're gonna, take the next step. But you know what? And I know we'll talk about this a little bit later. I think Urban Meyer's coming back to college football because he's no longer part of the NFL. And I would like to think, what program would you like to see the second winningest coach in the NCAA history go?
It depends on what fan I am. I want him wherever I'm a fan at, you know what I mean? So yeah, why would you not? How could you not? Yeah, that whole thing, yeah. It's we'll get into it a little bit here in a bit, but yeah, I mean, and I get it. And why do you think that is, though, that Oregon is so up and down so much with their recruiting? And it just seems like they can't seem, and I think maybe, I don't know, maybe the coach, I don't know, which he's not there anymore, but their old coach, I should say. And then, I mean, are people just going to migrate now back down to Southern California and go with some of them schools? Or because it seems to me like Oregon hasn't really been super consistent with their recruiting. If I can recall back, going years back, it kind of always has been kind of up and down. Am I right about that, or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. And, as much as I'm a defensive minded coach and defense wins championships, but offensive scores points. And so when you saw Cristobal get the top 10 recruiting class, top 5 recruiting class, so on and so forth, he was typically getting these defensive players and offensive linemen. And that's kind of how he built his team, but he never got that quarterback fix. And that's why they had to consistently, hit the transfer portal and try to get these scrubs to come in and play for him. To speak to why they keep doing this, I'm honestly just assuming that they're trying to change the game because, believe it or not, college football has benefited greatly from the University of Oregon. They were the first team to come out with all these different jerseys, the blackout jerseys, and to really kind of get kids excited for the jersey thing. And I'm not a big fan of that because I'm old school.
Yeah.
But as Coach Prime would say, you look good, you play good. And then on top of that, this fast-paced spread offense, that came from Chip Kelly back in Oregon. Before then, everybody would just huddle, take 25 seconds to get to the ball and hike it. And Chip Kelly in Oregon kind of changed the game as far as that.
Right.
And I think they're just trying to revolutionize the game again, so to speak. But I think they're fighting up the wrong hill. And they just need to find a kid and develop him. So Dan Lanning, if you get Bo Nix, I just want to say you got to pull a Jacksonville Jaguars and you got to fire this. I don't like this move. And as an Oregonian, I am a Texas fan, of course, but as an Oregonian, of course, I want the Beavers and the Ducks to be competitive. And I just don't see that happening with what's going on right now. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's unfortunate too, because like you said, there's I don't know. It just don't seem to be as consistent as it should be with the excitement. Because that does draw people. I think that was initially the draw, and Phil Knight being the big dog from Nike, and then, them having so many jerseys. I think a lot of that is just to draw some of these kids that, hey, you're going to get endorsements. You're going to get, you're going to have a heck of an opportunity here, which I still agree with. But, there again, now it seems like we're scrambling for desperation right now. Like, hey, let's get anybody we can in here and let's try to see what they'll do.
It seems like the biggest winners from the NIL, name, image, and likeness. And for you guys who don't know this, you can start paying your college athletes, baseball, football, basketball, women's basketball, so on and so forth. But the biggest winners of NIL are those Texas schools. And they're not necessarily getting like the biggest and sexiest brand names. I'm assuming because they're all oil tycoons. That's where all that money's coming from. But as far as name, image, and likeness, how hard is it really for Nike to say like, yeah, I'll sponsor you. Let's make you a new shoe. Let's get you your own clothing line. That should attract kids in itself. And so where I thought Oregon would really benefit from that, they're kind of just squandering this potential piggy bank, so to speak. I don't want to be too hard on the Ducks, but after the Bo Nix transfer, I'm a little concerned at where they're going to be in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would be too. And that's not to say he won't grab any recruits this next year. I think, and that's what I wanted to ask you too, is do you think because of the coaching uncertainty part of that, Do you think that was the cause for them not getting as many solid recruits, or no?
Yes and no. Um, there are some schools that recruit based off of the name. So, for instance, University of Oklahoma, the Sooners, they're recruiting based off of the name of Oklahoma, and that's why you didn't see them dip too much. I mean, to have a top 10 recruiting class after losing your head coach to USC,
Yeah, that's
I
a
mean,
big deal.
that's strictly logo right there. Oregon is not a powerhouse, and I want to reiterate this for the Oregon fans out there. You guys are idiots if you think that Oregon's a powerhouse. Don't get me wrong; they've had a couple good years. They've had a couple good Rose Bowls. They've been to the national championship twice within the last, say, what, 10, 15 years. But that doesn't make you a blue blood. I'm sorry. You can only pay so much to win. Versus say like a Michigan, an Oklahoma, an Alabama. Those are blue bloods. So because they don't have that, you do need a coach to bring these kids in. And Mario Cristobal is a wonderful recruiter. He's a wonderful man, and the kids love him. Dan Lanning is also a really good recruiter, but let's make no mistake, he just got the job a week before signing day. So I think if he continues, because like I said, Dan Lanning is, I think he signed the top recruiting class last year for Georgia. Next year will be a good telltale sign of what he can do as a recruiter, as a head coach.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think that some kids will wait and kind of see, like, he might attract some kids if he starts building something nice out there? I mean, that would be some things I would be looking at as a player anyway. But you got so much to pick from nowadays, and if you're on the D1 recruiting, list per se, I mean, man, you got tons of opportunities here, so I don't know. Oregon, they're gonna have to figure something out, or I'm telling you what, it's gonna be a long 3 or 4 years coming up, because I have a feeling that those guys down in California are gonna be coming with some thunder.
Yeah, and that's yet to be seen because Oregon, we're ragging on Oregon for having like a top 35 recruiting class. USC was in the top 78,
Yeah.
barely beat UTSA. Go Roadrunners.
Hey, there they are.
But the Pac-12 is so up in the air, and they're at that point of no return. The Event Horizon, for you science people out there, I don't know if you know this. Like, yeah, sure, I have a mustache, but I'm quite the science geek. The Event Horizon talks about where you get so close to a black hole, you get sucked in, and that's what we're dealing with the Pac-12. Are they at the event horizon of no longer being a Power 5 conference because their teams suck, or is it possible that Lincoln Riley at USC, Dan Lanning can get Oregon up to the upper echelons of the Pac-12? It's yet to be seen. So I don't know. And sometimes coaches are kind of sacrificial lambs. Basically, they get hired, get fired later on until a better coach arrives. And it would be interesting to see if that's what Dan Lanning is. Because I'll be frank with you, now that Urban Meyer is available, I feel kind of stupid. I would have hired him as the athletic director at any college.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not too big on the Pac-12, and I don't think I will be for a very long time until they actually start winning some damn games.
Yeah, because not only that, it's even for them to boost up some of their rankings, they're going to be looking at the conference as a whole and saying, these guys are terrible. Like, you're going to have to really make sure you schedule appropriately to make sure you play some some powerhouse teams, which a majority of all of them, let's all be honest, it's in the SEC. Big Ten's got some good teams as well, but I mean, I think if we all want to be honest with ourselves, I think we could look, and I mean, even Stevie Wonder could see that the SEC is packed, full of some powerhouses, and it ain't going to get any lighter anytime soon.
And like I said, the top 25, and that's where you want to be out of like 100, and let's just say in the 100 schools, because there's like 132, but no one really cares about. Sorry, Roadrunners, no one cares about you outside of me and Dan and the good old faithful here at the Clutch Time podcast, but no one cares about those schools. So to be in the top 25 is where you want to be, and that's Arkansas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. It's almost all of the SEC schools that are in the top 25. The rich keep getting richer. And if the Big 12 would still have Texas and Oklahoma, then you'd be sitting fairly good. Like, okay, good. We had two top 10 schools in the Big 12, but that's no longer the case. But the ACC is actually getting stronger because of North Carolina getting in the top 10 in recruiting. And I think Florida State, even though losing, they're the number one recruit in the nation to Jackson State, they're still top 15. Notre Dame's top 10, Michigan's top 10, Ohio State's top 4. So, I mean, yeah, outside of a couple Big Ten schools and a couple of ACC schools, it's all SEC all the time. And those Southerners, man. And I lived in the South for a little bit. I got family down in Arkansas. There's really not a lot to do down there. So no duh that they take football seriously, because what are they going to do outside of football? Work and drink themselves to death. No offense, Southerners. Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, and then that's a great transition right into the NFL, which is kind of tag teaming off of what we've been talking about, which is, Urban Meyer getting fired. And this is just unbelievable to me. But in this day and age, I'm not super shocked by it. I did know that. I didn't realize how much Urban Meyer was hated by a lot of people. Like, people just did not look at him. I don't know if it's that, or they're just jumping on the bandwagon of the fact that, he's a mean coach now, and everybody was praising him, a while back, but, especially when he was coaching in college. But I don't get it. I don't know where this came from or why, but it's sure just some things just don't add up to me, but that's just me.
All right, everybody get your popcorn ready, because I'm about to just unload, because, Urban Meyer is like a father to me. I mean, I'm more frustrated than a bald guy in a wig store, with $2 less than the wig that he wants. Because this was a complete, and you do have that little button that can bleep me out.
Yeah, I'll have to do that and post edit.
That's good, because I don't think I can really hold it back. But ultimately, it comes down to this. I fucking hate the media. I fucking hate all facets of the media. I fucking hate CNN and Fox News and MSNBC. And now it's getting into my sports, because ultimately this was a hit job by the NFL media elites. They didn't like Urban Meyer. And I will concede to the fact it is harder to transition from the college football ranks, where you can tell these kids what to do, you can coach them hard, and you're making more money than these kids, to go into the NFL, where these players are making more money than you, and they don't necessarily receive that kind of coaching. I can concede to that fact. But coaching is coaching, regardless if it's NFL, college, high school. And from day one, you have these NFL media rooting for this guy to lose. What is the fireable offense? Why did you fire him midseason? I'll tell you why. It's because he was looking to probably beat Houston, which they lost to today, and he was probably going to beat the Jets. Last year, before Urban Meyer, or maybe it was like Urban Meyer's first. No, this is Urban Meyer's first year. Last year, they only won one game. This year, they won 2 games thus far. 2 games thus far. Okay, so right there, he just doubled the winning, percentage total. If Urban Meyers was still on staff, I am fairly confident that he would beat Houston. Okay, so then you have 3 wins. After that's the Jets, who haven't been relevant since, I don't know, there's a coach, Rex Ryan, who has a foot fetish. So the last time they were actually relevant was when the foot fetish guy was at the helm and the butt fumble happened, in Mark Sanchez. So now you have 4 wins. You can't fire a coach who went from 1 win to 4 wins. So they fired him at an opportune time. And why? I want to go back to what's the fireable offense. Apparently this kicker, who's a scrub, who got cut from the team, said he got kicked in the hamstring during the preseason. And then he was on this interview saying that he got up in Urban Meyer's face and said, "Don't you ever kick me again." I call bullshit. First off, everybody acts tougher. And I am attacking this kicker because, one, he got cut in November, and then he got cut from Pittsburgh. So you're not a good kicker. So there's a couple things I want to unpack with this. One, stop playing tough. You probably didn't say, "Oh, don't you ever kick me again, you MFer." You most likely said, "I'm sorry, coach," and you walked away like a good bitch. All right, because that's what you do. Don't act tough for the media. And then 2, and I think you and I talked about this. If you watch coaches in the NFL and they're calling plays, they're covering their mouth. because there's so much camera footage that they don't want people stealing their calls. So that being said, if they have to cover their mouths to make the play call, why didn't any of us see this in August? This would have been a huge story if it actually happened. But the fact of the matter is it probably didn't happen. And then if this is the straw that broke the camel's back, because that's what they're saying, that he was abusive to players, why are we seeing it now? And I want to make no mistake, kickers, they're not football players. You guys are soccer players that get pulled for one thing. In fact, I played college football. Kickers and special teamers and punters, they don't have the same practice we do. They condition differently. They're not on the field half the time. They're just kind of goofing off. In fact, the only time that we really hung out with kickers is if they were like 21 and they can get us beer or drugs. Not saying I did either of those kids, so don't do that. Like, share, and subscribe. But let's not take a kicker seriously in the NFL. Okay. But ultimately, I think the reason why he got fired is pretty much the number one joke we play on this podcast, because he got grinded on by a 20-something-year-old hottie at a bar, and that didn't look good to the NFL.
Yeah, yeah.
And, there's so much controversy, quote unquote, like bringing Tim Tebow on to try out as a tight end. That's not a fireable offense to me. Or the fact that he hired an alleged racist from Ohio, the University of Iowa. And here's the thing. I don't really know what happened. Nothing was necessarily substantially proven with this Iowa strength coordinator, but they're claiming he's a racist. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to actually hear him drop some pretty bad racial slurs for me to believe he's a racist, because his number one job was to get athletes into the NFL, and he was really good at it. And 70% of the athletes in the NFL are black. So you're telling me that this racist guy spent all his time helping kids of color reach six-figure salaries? I don't buy it. This was a hit job from the get-go. The NFL media hates college coaches going up to the ranks, and it's just a good old boy system. You want to talk about white privilege? Let's talk about privilege of NFL coaches. You can suck, get fired at one NFL job just to go be a head coach at another NFL job. But God forbid one of the winningest college football coaches goes to your ranks, and you can't have them. And they keep on saying, "Oh, college football coaches never make it in the NFL." I got two: Barry Switzer and Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
Or how about the guy who's leading the NFC West and wins right now, and that's Cliff Kingsbury. And to give you guys perspective, Cliff Kingsbury wasn't even a good college coach. He coached at Texas Tech. So I'm absolutely frustrated. And frankly, this is why I don't really pay attention too much to the NFL, because sports used to be the dessert of life. With politics and what happens in the real world. That's like eating broccoli and Brussels sprouts, but sports was the only time I can have ice cream. Well, now those fuckers are putting Brussels sprouts in my ice cream and say, enjoy it.
Right.
Absolutely not. Fuck you guys. Excuse my language.
No, it is. It seems to be headed that way. It's been headed that way. I think a lot of it too is they're trying to get some of these old school hard coaches out of there. You know what I mean? So something's working there. So I'm disappointed at the whole situation. Like you said, a kicker. I mean, come on, man. I mean, he kicked you that hard in the hamstring to where, your hamstrings as a kicker should be super strong. So Urban Meyer should be able to kick you in the hamstrings as hard as he possibly could. And it maybe give you a little bruise at most, but I don't know. That's just me. I just think everything's blown out of proportion.
Dan, have you ever tried to kick someone in the hamstring?
No, I don't think so.
My point is, it's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
So what is Urban Meyer like in these kid taekwondo classes? And then he gave you a roundhouse? Let's be real. It was probably just a gentle kick, because like I said, you can't kick someone that high and that hard. And this just sounds, and this goes back to the whole millennial culture of playing gotcha. And this is where I get a little concerned, because now there are two coaches fired from the NFL version of the Me Too movement. And I do think you're right. I think they're trying to get these old school hard-nosed coaches out, but then we're turning the NFL into the NBA, and that's not a good thing. This is a gladiatorial sport. I don't give a shit what Cam Newton wears the day of the game. I don't care if he's wearing a scarf. Can he score me a touchdown? And the hypocrisy in all this is just beyond me, because there's so many players, past and present, who have charges So Deshaun Watson, who is not starting or necessarily playing, but he's still on the roster, making millions of dollars, and he has multiple. I want to stress to this again, audience, multiple with a capital M, sexual assault allegations. He is still in the NFL. Kareem Hunt, great running back, awesome talent. We have video footage of him beating the living hell out of this woman. Okay. Those are crimes. Those are legitimate crimes.
Right.
And they still have a job. This guy gets grinded on by a 21-year-old hottie. If that's a crime, I should be in prison. I'm not saying women are just, grinding up on me or anything like that. But I mean, for God's sakes. And I want to be clear. I'm okay if Deshaun Watson is free of all charges, let him play. And the NFL is not the moral police. Like, let's say I'm a drunk and I beat, my spouse and whatever that. Most jobs aren't going to fire you for doing that. Like, I'm going to still be employed, and I do think that should, to an extent, happen in the NFL. So, if you guys, I don't think the NFL should be kicking out players for these misconducts and these crimes. But at the same time, if you're letting these guys play and make millions of dollars, why are you firing a coach who has done nothing wrong? In fact, improved your organization.
Yeah.
Doubled your wins. It's absolutely asinine. And then all these ESPN talking heads are delighted. Who the hell roots for a guy? ESPN, I hope you guys go under. Fox Sports is way better than you bastards. Jacksonville, I hope you guys never win a game again. And I'm glad you guys lost to the Texans.
Yeah, it's and it is, and you're onto something there, and it just seems like everything is a big deal until it's not. Like you said, how is Deshaun Watson not being? I don't even think I've even heard anything about it. Who does he know? You know what I mean? That because that's kind of what that's what frustrates me about, going back to what you said about the media and your ESPN guys, and there's some good ESPN, analysts and broadcasters and whatnot. But man, it's getting a lot of foo-foo stuff going on here, and a lot of fluffy crap, that isn't a lot of this stuff. I'm listening to some of these shows, and there's some of these shows, and I've mentioned this before in the past, that don't even mention the game hardly. It's all about vaccines and, this racism is a problem in our country. I mean, I disagree with that. I'm sorry, say what you want, but I'm not saying it's never been an issue. I'm not saying it's not the issue that they're trying to exploit. You're always going to have bad people in every situation. There's going to be bad things that are going to happen, whether you're white, black, Hispanic. I really don't feel like that's necessarily the issue. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not saying there aren't idiots out there who have, anyway, I'm not going to go into all that, but that's just my point, is that, I mean, it's so for us to crucify a guy like, or the media, not us, but the media, a guy like Urban Meyer, and not exploit. Let's just be fair about it then. Let's get these other, okay, well, what, we're not even talking about this, but that's why pro sports, like you mentioned earlier, is getting super, super difficult to watch, because they're screwing the game up, and it's not even enjoyable and fun to watch, as it has been before. I mean,
let me ask you something, because you said there's a couple good football analysts for ESPN, and I don't mean to challenge you on your show, because make no mistake, you're the host and you just allow me on here. But can you name one good football analyst from ESPN?
One good football analyst. It's yeah, no, that's a good question. And lately, I haven't heard even basketball, honestly, if you want to know the truth.
Well, and it just goes back to what you're saying. They're making it political. They want to talk about COVID. Listen, I don't need you to talk about COVID. These are top tier, physically fit athletes. They're not going to die from COVID. And when it happens, I will be upset. And make no mistake, people, every death has been tragic under this pandemic. Okay, so I'm not taking away those stats, but let's just look at the data. These guys are in their, I mean, Tom Brady's the oldest NFL player right now at 45. Not
Yeah.
too many people are dropping off at that age. Nonetheless, physically fit people, nonetheless, the upper echelons. So when they're talking about COVID, they're talking about guys who are just getting cold symptoms here. Get off your high horses. And then when we speak about racism, listen, I agree with you for the most part. I don't think racism is the number one issue in this country. I think we're not perfect, and I think there are issues that we need. Let's also not focus on the two sports that provide, oh, the NFL so racist. Really, 70% of them are black, and all those guys are making a six-figure salary. What other sport or what other job does that with the African community, African American community, or the black community, depending on what is politically correct? None of them do. So if you really want to attack racism and systemic racism, look somewhere else outside of football or basketball even, or just sports in general. It's freaking stupid.
Stuff never happens. It does happen. And I'm all, but honestly, I've had it happen to me before. What I'm getting at and saying that, I'm not trying to make one thing right or wrong. It's all wrong, regardless, but it's just not as big of an issue as everybody's blowing it up to be. There's people are getting shot in all colors, and I really can't stand any of it. So let's get into some of the games. It looks like the Colts beat the Patriots, as I said, coming in. The Chiefs beat the Chargers. Cowboys had a win against the Giants. The Steelers beat the Titans. Man, they've had a rough run. The Colts beat the Patriots, though. That was kind of surprising to me, though.
They're just a really good team, and they're kind of like the Titans. And when I say that is they have a really strong running game that kind of overshadows their passing game.
Yeah.
So the Titans are really are nothing without the running back. And, Carson Wentz hasn't necessarily performed to where he should be. And if it wasn't for their running back, I don't think they would be relevant. One of the things that is interesting, though, I had no idea that Dallas was like 10-4 this year, double-digit wins this season. Hearing Vargas talk about them, because I hate the Cowboys, but I thought they were just like a scrub team, but they're pretty good. They're actually making the NFC East look pretty good.
Yeah. No, they're legit. And it's been weird because their defense has really stepped up their game, and that's never really been their MO per se. But yeah, they're looking good. I'm thinking they have just as much of a shot as anybody at making a good run at the Super Bowl this year. What about the Chiefs, though? I mean, man, are they back? I mean, are they going to be a force to reckon with from here out?
Well, as much as I don't like to toot my own horn, but here we go, beep, beep. I said from the very beginning, the NFL's a long season, and give the Chiefs time. I think they can be a contender. I think it's going to be probably them in the AFC Championship. It's clearly not going to be the Jaguars. But yeah, I don't know who you think would actually challenge them. Maybe if the Chargers get in there and they meet again in one of those divisional rounds, I think that could happen. But outside of that, I don't see anyone in the AFC taking on the Chargers.
Yeah, that would be a tough. Yeah, man, that would be. I mean, yeah, I don't.
Well,
I'm out. Buffalo, maybe, but I don't know.
Now Buffalo's really struggling now.
I was wrong. They're struggling. Yeah.
But I'll actually take a step back. I think New England it'll probably be the two bays in the NFC, and then the AFC would be New England and KC. This is what I would be predicting at this point.
That's what I've said. New England was going to be in it, and then whoever made a run, which at this point does look like Kansas City. And then, yeah, my picks haven't changed necessarily. I mean, the Cowboys could creep in there. The Cardinals, honestly,
I think they lost today to Detroit.
They lost today. Let's see. Did they lose today? They lost they did lose to Detroit. Yeah, you're right. 30-12. Dang. And I've always wondered that about Arizona. They started out really, really well. But I just didn't feel like they had that toughness. For some reason, I feel like in comparison to Tampa Bay, as you like to say, and Green Bay, and really even Dallas at this point. I don't know. That's just my thoughts, but kudos to Detroit, man. They're they've had some pretty good battles, and that's their second win, and that's actually a pretty big second win for them anyway. But yeah, as far as the Super Bowl goes, I think we pretty much covered that. And this is what, the third week in a row we've had the same answers.
Yeah. And just kind of speaking to what you're saying, I'm super pleased that Detroit, and they embody the city. They're tough. They'll
Yeah.
take a licking, just like the economy is ramsacked Detroit, Michigan, but they'll always, find a way to battle back. And I don't know if you know this, but Jared Goff, the quarterback, for the Detroit Lions, he has a brother named Jack,
Mm-hmm.
right? Jack Goff, and he's a big fan of the show. And I think that he just took the clip and showed it to him, and we're the reason why they're 2-1 these last 3 games.
Hey, I'll take it. I'll take it. My royalty checks, or our royalty check, hopefully it'll be in the mail here soon too.
I'll be honest with you, none of that's true. I just wanted to make a wordplay joke on jack off, but apparently you didn't catch it.
You're so stupid.
Jared and jack off.
Oh, this is going south fast. Oh, shoot.
Yeah, we need Vargas back.
Yeah, God, we're gonna get fired. Moving moving right on to the NCAA men's basketball, which I know is one of your expertises as well. Memphis upsets number 6 Alabama this last week. Creighton, good old Creighton upsets Villanova, which is number 9 ranked. Baylor actually beat Oregon, but Oregon has actually made that a very tough win for them, which I was really shocked at. Gonzaga beat Texas Tech. LSU beats Louisiana Tech, which was one of my favorite games of the weekend. And Kentucky just throttles North Carolina, and we mentioned that a little bit earlier. But a game I really wanted to see was Tennessee and Memphis. It got canceled. I'm assuming there was a COVID issue. I don't know. Who knows why it gets canceled anymore? We don't even know. But yeah, so some big games as far as basketball goes this week. Memphis, they kind of bounced back. They're kind of starting to shift in another direction, which is good because they were looking really bad. That's why I'd really like to see them play Tennessee, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So yeah, so it's as far as basketball goes. And then Kentucky, the Kentucky North Carolina game, basically Kentucky just really, North Carolina is a shooting team, and they really put the pressure out on them guys and made it really tough for them to shoot. And I think that was the dagger, besides Kentucky's just playing a lot better basketball than they have all year, in my opinion.
So is there a team in the basketball sphere that you look and like, okay, this is the Alabama. This team is going to win a national championship this year? Because it seems like everybody's just kind of losing all of a sudden.
Yeah, college basketball is so much different because they do play so many more games than what they do in football. And so there's not really it shifts. So right now Baylor is number 1, right? So you have Baylor is number 1, Duke is number 2, Purdue is number 3, UCLA is 4, Gonzaga 5, Alabama 6, and then Kansas, Arizona, Villanova, and USC. That's your top 10. Out of all of those guys in the top 10, anybody can beat anybody. But I will say Baylor is probably the most impressive team thus far. And they are 9-0. They have not lost a game yet. And the thing that makes them so good is they are a very good defensive team. And you said it earlier. That goes with basketball, football. It's, to me, defense wins championships. I mean, you just can't get away from it. If you play a good defense, unless you have just an absolutely terrible offense, you're going to win a championship. And Baylor is that team, which is odd because usually when a team wins a championship, because they won it last year with ease, by the way, they lost 3 guys, I believe, 3 key guys. And for them to still come back this year, and we're going into, we're going toward the end of December, and they're at number 1 this year again. And I mean, basketball is really your January, February, and then you hit your March. Those are that's your key. Because, well, to just give you an idea, so this last week you'll see games like let me pick out a dandy here. Duke versus South Carolina State. That's normal. Texas played Arkansas Pine Bluff. Illinois played I think it was St. Francis or something along those, St. Joseph, maybe. No, it wasn't St. Joseph. I think it was St. Francis or something. I mean, just throttles them. And these are some of these teams, and I get why they do it, to bring some excitement to some of the smaller schools and whatnot. But but one game that actually surprised me this last week, and let's see, I believe it was Arkansas. So the LSU Louisiana Tech game was my game. Hofstra. That's what it was. Hofstra. This is Arkansas. Again, going back to the BYU thing. This is a ranked 24th in the country. They were actually in the top 10 or top 15 early in the season. Got beat by Hofstra by 8 points. So those games can creep up on them too. So it's very similar as far as some of these teams will play a tough schedule. That's why scheduling is so important for the NCAA tournament.
So where's Michigan in all this? Because I don't know who's the basketball coach. I know he's an ex-player, and I know there's a lot of hype around him.
Juwan Howard.
And where are they at right now? I don't hear too much about Michigan right now.
Michigan is playing like hot garbage right now. And that's not even an exaggeration. They are underperforming at this point. Now, keep in mind, they play in the Big Ten. Now, in the last few years, and this is just my personal opinion, maybe it's a little biased because I'm from the Midwest, but the Big Ten is a really, really tough league to win in. A very tough league to win in. And Michigan's just having its battles right now. Same thing with Michigan State, by the way, with Tom Izzo and Michigan State squad. They are actually playing much better than what they've started out. Believe it or not, they're like, I think their record's 9-2. So they've only had 2 losses, but man, their turnovers. And I think that's where I was going with that, is I think between the Michigan teams, it's just turnovers and not really taking care of the ball. And just like defense wins championships, if you can play good defense, but then you can't take care of the ball, you know what I mean? It's just not a good mix right now. So Michigan and Juwan Howard, he was one of the Fab Five freaks that came in, freshmen. That Michigan team was fun to watch, but right now they're not so fun to watch.
No, it's really weird to see, because when you're naming the top 10, I saw a lot of Big 12 schools and then a lot of SEC schools as well.
Yeah.
And I just don't know where that's coming from, honestly, because I think the SEC has been so dominant at football that they didn't really need to be outside of Kentucky. Wildcat fans, I'm aware of you guys, but outside of that, Alabama, Arkansas, how the hell are they getting in there?
Yeah, they Arkansas like I said, they started out hot. They weren't really playing very good teams, and so their record 9-1, that reflection really isn't I don't know. I think that's why they fell so many spots so quick. But dude, you have you got Houston, Auburn, or wait, Auburn's not an SEC school.
No, Auburn is, Houston isn't.
Houston isn't. That's right. Okay. So we got, there's still a lot in here. And Kentucky, I think, is going to start moving up. They looked pretty good this last weekend. Another team was that Texas Tech team. I was really impressed with them as well. They got a kid on their team. Anyway, he's not a kid. He's a junior. But this dude is like 7'5", I believe, if I'm not mistaken. This dude was huge. And he actually moved pretty well on his feet. I mean, I was like really surprised at how well he moved. And but they were kind of, I think they're going to be a sleeper team. They're going to be that team nobody wants to play. Just because they can show spurts of being really good. Iowa State's another one that's just kind of, hanging out there that I think they're going to be pretty stinking good too. I mean, they've beat Oregon State. That's not much of a, but they've beat Memphis. They beat Xavier. They beat Creighton,
Wow.
Iowa. Yeah. So, well, they got a big game coming up New Year's Day, which is going to be they'll be playing Baylor. So that will tell us exactly where they stand. But they've had some big wins. Like they haven't played a soft schedule like some of these other teams have. So it's college basketball is really ramping up to be really fun and exciting again. And I don't know if it's just because we really didn't have it last year, but you're seeing a lot of similar teams and then some new teams coming in. USC is in there. Yeah, we got some good ones in here. Seton Hall has been playing fairly well. Texas has been up and down. I know you're a big Longhorn fan. I picked them early in the season, and I still think that they're going to be one of the top teams. They've dropped from I think they started out at like number 5 or 6. They're down to 17 right now. So
Ugh.
yeah, but just hold tight because it is a long season, and I think Texas is going to be really, really good. They're just going to be that menacing team that some, like I said earlier, Memphis is turning it around. They look like, I mean, terrible. Like I don't even know if they should be playing college basketball. Like it was that bad, and they started to really turn it around. So we'll see what happens in college. We got some big games coming up over the holidays, which will be fun to watch, along with the bowl games. Man, we got a lot of excitement as far as NBA goes this week. Steph is a machine. I do got to bring that up. Steph set the all-time record for three-pointers, for NBA history, which is cool. In my opinion, couldn't happen to a better person. From everything I've seen from him. Other than that, the NBA is still just kind of cruising right now. It really don't get too heated until you get into usually right after the NCAA tournament, you start getting into but one interesting thing, Ryan, is this. Kyrie Irving has not played this year because of the vaccination thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, they've had some COVID stuff come up and some games delayed and changed and this and that. Brooklyn is now talking about bringing Kyrie Irving back part-time as a part-time NBA player. He wouldn't be able to play in New York, California, and some of these other towns or states, I should say, that have this mandate going on. And so I just thought it was interesting that now they're like, okay, well, we'll bring you back now.
So when you say part-time, is he like practicing? Is he working out, or has he just not been part of the team essentially?
Well, he hasn't been part of the team, and part of that is obviously Brooklyn's in New York. New York is a mandated state. They have mandated vaccinations as far as the NBA players in those states. And Kyrie said, no, I'm not doing it. And so he has not played. Keep in mind, and I know a lot of people say that, the media there again makes stuff up and just starts blabbing stupid crap. But Kyrie and KD are like best friends, just FYI for everybody out there. There's nothing, there's nothing coming between them per se. I mean, obviously KD wants him on the court, but so now he's going to have him part-time in the cities that they will let him play. He's going to play. I just thought it was interesting. I thought, my God, where does this stop? Where does it end? Where do we just say, okay, these are professional athletes, like you said? I mean, they have chefs. They have the greatest nutrition on the planet. They got the best rehab in the world. We're talking American professional sports, so I don't know. I don't get it. And like you said, I think a lot of these guys, I guess there is no such thing as just the regular flu and common cold. maybe a sniffle here and there. It's all COVID and you might die, get your vaccination. Anyway, I won't go on that rant, but
we can just real quick, if you don't mind, let's go to one of Michael Jordan's greatest games ever, the flu game.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I, like I said, I don't want to get to this point where, because the flu is different than COVID, and I will concede to that. So I'm not trying to make that distinction, but to these athletes, it's very similar.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get maybe trying to protect the coaches, maybe, but I mean, if you're already vaccinated with the therapeutics that are out there, I mean, we all have our job occupational hazards. For me, it's sitting at a desk and getting carpal tunnel. So if you want to make millions of dollars, maybe it's being vaccinated and being around these players like Kyrie Irving who aren't vaccinated. But I find it silly, considering him to be a part-time player, because I just want to know what that means. Is he in shape enough to play, or is he like James Harden in the beginning of the season where you looked like he had a little too many cheeseburgers? Is he really going to make a splash? Probably not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but that's all very valid points. And that's all the same things that I've thought of is like, wow, well, has he been running and playing? Or, I mean, I'm sure he's Kyrie Irving. I mean, he's still one of the greatest players in the league when he plays. And I don't know. That'll be interesting to see how that all pans out rather. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this stuff ends up, man. You just never know in today's day and age. And with that, man, it looks like this is a wrap.
Merry Christmas, everybody. And since Vargas isn't here, I guess that makes me the best looking Ryan on this podcast. I am humble
in
this award. Thank you.
Yes, we want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. We will see you before the new year. We love y'all. God bless.